I am a wildlife biologist and I work mainly in the intersection of people and wildlife. Thank you.
My name is Kashero Paul. I'm a wildlife ecologist by background and currently working at the East African Natural History Society, Nature Kenya as a program manager responsible for the science work within the society.
Over to you, Eric.
Okay, my name is Eric Kinoti and I work for Rocha Kenya. My background is wildlife management with 3 years of experience on this field, and I am the coordinator for the Crows No More, the project that is tasked to reduce this invasive species of house crow.
Thank you, and you're welcome yet again. Patricia Nanteza is my name. I am the host of Science Unmuted. Kampala, Uganda, born and bred. I live in Nairobi. I like to call myself an African. That's why I tell stories of any African. I don't care which country you come from. So let's start with Paul. Paul, what exactly is happening in Nairobi? What are Indian crows? Where have they been seen in the city? And what do we know about how they got here?
We need first to understand that we have a diverse species of crows in the country. Indian house crow is just one of them. So we have pied crows, which are very common. So they're the birds which are black and white, which are very common across the country. We have others which are living in the highlands, like Cape rooks, fantail ravens. They're all crows, but the uniqueness about the Indian house crow is that this species is not indigenous to East Africa or to Kenya, and therefore it's a species which has come in to the subcontinent of Africa and particularly in Kenya, having been restricted within the coastal region of the country. So this house crow is native or indigenous to the Indian or the Asian subcontinent, and that's why it's called the Indian house crow. What we have seen over time is this species spreading mainly along the coastal regions within the continent of Africa and the subcontinent of Asia. There are statements of how it was introduced to East Africa and mainly in Zanzibar, having been brought in to control waste as a species to eat waste within the Zanzibar, and this species was able now to move over to the mainland Africa. We have had recent sightings of the Indian house crow in Nairobi, where we had a report. One of our volunteers has reported it last year, saying that she has seen a crow which looks like an Indian house crow in Nairobi. And people dismissed her because there was no photograph to confirm the sighting. But then 2 months ago, end of June, she confirmed with a sighting with a photograph of the crow and found around Nairobi, Jogoo Road, close to City Stadium. So this confirmed the sighting that indeed she had actually seen the Indian house crow in Nairobi. These crows are known to be within Mombasa, the coastal region of the country, with a bit more migrating northwards along Mombasa Road. I think we'll talk more about that. So we never expected them to be in Nairobi. So these sightings been recorded in Nairobi is of great worry, and there is need to start thinking on how best to control this species within the city. So it's not just any other crow, it's a specific crow which we call the Indian house crow, but people need to be able to distinguish this species because like the ravens are equally dark, but the Indian house crow is very distinct, very slender with a very slender bill and a bit of a grayish neck color. It's not fully black species.
Thank you, Paul. Before we move on to the next question, you've said you have sighted one Indian crow. Is that
not one?
15
crows. So when it was reported, when they were reported by a member, a lady called Jennifer, she photographed around 5. So at that point, we dispatched a team to go out and actually confirm the sighting, and working closely with the National Museums of Kenya and the Kenya Wildlife Service, the 2 mandated government institutions, to confirm that indeed the 5 individuals are actually Indian house crows. Reaching the site, we have counted 15 crows within the same region with potential breeding. So they have made nests in some of the trees. So increasing risk for the spread of these crows, because now we never thought they were breeding, but now we confirm they're actually breeding within the city. There might be 15 now, but maybe after 2 months there might be 30. These 15 were counted, and we have visited other sites within Nairobi, and we have confirmed that they're only restricted in one small area within Nairobi. We have done a surveillance for the past 3 weeks, and we can say that they have not been found in other locations within the city, only restricted within that area of the city stadium.
Okay, that is understood. We have confirmation of 15 crows. Why should Nairobi? Why should we be concerned?
This is an invasive species. It's entering an ecosystem that did not evolve with it. This crow is known to be quite aggressive and extraordinarily successful. An invasive species does not have to be a large number to transform an ecosystem. Actually, the danger is not the crow that we are seeing now. It's what will be here 5 years from now, especially when we imagine that this crow becomes very successful, especially in a place where rubbish is readily available. I think that in a city like Nairobi, if you think about what happens in our high density settlements, in our markets, in our slot, when you imagine what happens in the city of Nairobi in terms of management of municipal waste, our slaughterhouses, our markets, our high density areas, the ability of this crow to utilize that rubbish to actually outperform all the other birds that we have here is so serious. And this crow, I'm sure Paul will say, has a very aggressive nature. It feeds on other birds, it feeds on their eggs, it feeds on other small animals. Literally can alter the biodiversity of a place in a very short time because of the aggressive nature. So we are thinking about 5 years from now, if we do nothing, how many will they be and what will we lose in terms of biodiversity around the city?
Wow, interesting and quite a very scary picture you have painted there. This bird, I saw a picture of the crow and it's a fairly small bird. It's not like, I come from Kampala where we have marabou storks. They are the ones that behave like the Indian crow. They eat rubbish and things like that, but they're really big, gigantic birds. But the Indian crow is a small bird and it can actually eat other birds. It can eat tiny animals.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it tends to be present along the coast. I believe that islands like Zanzibar have had to deal with this. Dar es Salaam has had to deal with this crow. And the reports that come back from those places is really completely disappearing species of birds that used to be common in those areas. So the ability of this bird to alter the biodiversity of an area is proven. It's something that is known to scientists, and it's something we need to be afraid of when this population now starts to establish here in the city of Nairobi.
Okay, now I understand why we should actually be afraid, and it's not a matter of today, but like you've said, 5 years down the road. Eric has been involved in controlling the Indian crow along the Mombasa coastline. So he can share with us. First of all, just to follow up on Winnie's question, is the number of bird species in Mombasa reducing because of the presence of the Indian crow? But another question to that is, how serious is the Indian crow problem in Mombasa, and what lessons should Nairobi learn from you guys who have been trying to control it at the coast? Over to you, Eric.
I'll also begin by maybe clarifying one small point that the name Indian house crow was changed to house crow. So
Okay.
I think that was maybe due to some geopolitical reasons. So it's now called the house crow. Yes, this problem of a house crow is quite intense back here in the coast. And as Winnie has stated, there's a huge change wherever a big population of a crow invades a certain area. For example, in Mombasa, before we started our activities there at the Sarova Hotel, there used to be no sighting of any small birds at all. And the crows were roaming all over the compound. Within a very short time, after maybe like about 3 interventions, when the number of crows reduced, we're able to see now the small birds like the weavers are starting to nest and resuming their activities. So it means there was a kind of a pressure that was there when the crows were there. And it's not only in Mombasa, but just all over the coast. With the history of whatever we have been doing here, when we started here in Watamu, We also had a very huge problem, and one of them was the biodiversity. That is because these crows are very, very smart, and they can adapt to feeding almost everything. They just learn. We could even see them now starting to get into the marine ecosystem, starting to feed on the crabs, which is quite unusual for such kind of birds. So the problem here is economic reasons. They are quite a nuisance to the tourists by either making noise or also grabbing foods from the tourists, especially the children. They do not fear the children at all. And also by stepping on these, they could spread diseases, knowing these are scavengers that also feed on the dump sites. They could have stepped on hospital waste somewhere that is infected and then come step on a table where a tourist is feeding. So all this now brings very low ratings to our tourism sector, and this reduces the tourists who come. We also had a lot of complaints from the farmers, especially those from poultry farming. The business of chicken rearing, especially here in Watamu, was almost non-existent if you can't put the necessary measures. Because these birds have been quite keen to watch how the eagles do. So they see them snatching the poultry chicks, and then they learn from that. Remember, these are scavengers. They do not know how to hunt. So they grab the chicks, and then, so it's very hard to rear the free-range chicken. We also had complaints where the eyes of small calves, newborns, were gouged out by these crows. And also this goes also to even in children. If you leave a child outside, especially those small child, they can just come and do the same. So this is very, very, very risky. And also now there's also the noise pollution, especially during the mornings and the evenings when they come back to roost. They also soil around where they roost. So those people who used to park cars in the trees where they roost, used to get a new painting every day when they are roosting at night. So there was also many, many other concerns and more also spreading of diseases, although we haven't had a major outbreak, but they are known to be able to spread about 8 human diseases. These are zoonotic diseases and others. So yeah, these are the problems that we experience with the house crow, apart from the biodiversity loss.
My goodness, Eric, you have shocked me, but I also noticed Winnie was equally as shocked as I was. This is such a menace, you know?
Yes.
It now actually explains why, as a country, our leadership must take this invasion seriously. Whether it's just 15 birds or 10, a very big problem is in the looming if we don't do anything right now. To stay with you, Eric, just a little bit more, for you to share with us. You have painted a very beautiful picture of why we should worry, why the house crow is such a menace. But now talk to us a little bit about what you have been, the interventions you've been using at the coast and how successful they have been. You mentioned that after using certain interventions, after a short period of time, we saw the small birds, the weaver birds coming back. But I want you to quantify your time. What does a short period of time mean, and what exactly did you do?
So thank you, Patricia. When we started in late 2023, the reed poisoning using the stallicide started mid 2024. So we have been operating the poisoning program for about 2 years, and now we use a chemical that is called stallicide, which is an herbicide. And this stallicide, there's a reason why it is the only one that was chosen. First of all, it does not have secondary poisoning, which means that when the crow feeds on the poison and dies, there is no likelihood of it infecting any other animal like a scavenger or a dog or a cat. This poison also is very toxic specific, meaning it was specifically made for bird because it's an herbicide, and more specifically birds with close family ties to the crow, and that's the starling, which was the original one, hence the name stallicide, and now the crows. The crows are very, very smart. They cannot take just a normal poison. So it is a slow acting poison, and this gives time for the crow not to realize what's happening, so as I will explain later. What we do basically is when we find sites, and these are mostly where they feed, the crows are very, very smart. They do not just feed anyhowly. They have particular patches where they feed in groups. So when we identify these sites, our team starts what we call pre-baiting. And this is giving them the bait, but doesn't have any poison. This is because, as I said, the smartness of the crow, they do not just feed anyhow. So if they were just feeding on the dump site and then all of a sudden somebody starts giving them something today, they will not feed it. So it will take some time. So what we do is we get them used to us. So we feed them for about 8 to 10 days consecutively while maintaining the same time and the same site so that they get used to that person. And by the 8th day, they usually very used to the person until when they see them coming, you see them making joyful noises and calling each other. So that's when we know now the poisoning is should be done. On the 8th day, that's when we put now the same bait with the poison. And this poison takes about 12 to 18 hours to act, and there's a reason for this. I remember, as I said, these crows being very smart, if they had a poison that they were having and dying there and then, their comrades will be very wary of what's happening. What we see them doing is actually when there is a new feed on the ground, the older ones who are more wary of the surroundings, they let the young ones first go and eat and they watch. So when nothing happens to them, then that's when now the alphas come. So if it was a fast acting poison and the young ones die on taking the bait, then the older ones will definitely not take the bait and they will mark your face. So whenever you come to with something else, even if it's somewhere else, they will never eat your food. Back to the time. So when they take the poisoned bait, it takes about 10 to 12 hours to react in the body. And this makes the crow to move around freely to other patches because they have a kind of a routine. They know a particular time there's a lady who has been scrubbing fish, and after that there's a buffet at a certain hotel that is open, and from there they also know the municipal council lorry usually goes somewhere, so they have a particular pattern they follow. So by feeding in different areas in one day, it means they will not associate the poison with the site they fed in the morning. During that time, it's the entire day, so they will die while roosting at night. So the survivors will see their comrades dead, but in a different area. That's where they roost. So they will not know if it's the food that they first ate in the morning. So they will definitely come back to the site again. But if it were to happen otherwise, and they noted that your site, the bait that you're giving them is poisoned, they have been known even to abandon that site for up to 6 months, and they have particular noises that they make, and all their comrades will abandon that site. They will not feed anything from that site. So yeah, their smartness is quite interesting to us, but is also the basis of our method.
Very interesting methods you're using, and it's also intriguing to learn about how brilliant these birds are. But before I move to Winnie with a conservation question, Eric, I want you to confirm in very certain terms that this Sally, is it called a Salicide? This
Salicide.
Stalicide that you use to poison these birds only kills the house crow. Or, and of course you've said other crows. That means inadvertently, other crows that are not invasive, that trace their origin to the African continent also die.
Yes, a very good question. So this one goes to our method that we use, and our field officer, while putting the poisoned bait on the ground, so one of their biggest tasks is to keep away any non-target species. When he was pre-baiting for the 8 days, it also serves as a time for training the non-target species. These are species that we are not targeting. So when he sees a cat at that particular time, they chase them. We use just crude methods, just throw them stones, and then within a short time, they learn to know that the site is not conducive for them. And by the 8th day, we usually very sure that it's only the house crows that feed on the. We also we have scenarios also where the house crow aggressiveness comes in, and when any other species like a pied crow or a kite tries to come near the bait, you see them mobbing it and chasing it away. So they end up doing like 80% of our work. And with this, we have been able to record zero non-target species using this method of ours. And also, we are very keen when we put the bait, we make sure before it leaves to the next site, the site is clear and clean for any bait. And if the bait is still there, it is collected and taken to another site. Or if it cannot be used, it is also disposed as the manufacturer has instructed. So this has made us evade any other non-target species to come on site and also get poisoned.
Okay, thank you. Winnie, Eric says they have recorded 0% death of non-target species, but I'm still going to ask you this question as a conservationist. When is it justified to deliberately kill one species in order to protect others in the wider ecosystem?
Good question. And indeed, conservation should never become casual about taking life. As a conservationist, you're always thinking exactly that. Whether the animal is native or invasive, you can't be casual about taking life. So in this instance, we are now faced with a choice. We have to choose between uncomfortable outcomes. Because as has been very eloquently explained by Eric, the ethical question is not whether animals will die. The question is what will happen if we do nothing. We're faced with a very uncomfortable choice. If we do nothing, we may end up with the total loss of species that we are native to our ecosystem. We also should recognize as we are doing this that these crows are becoming successful because of our own failing as humans. First of all, we're the ones who introduced them as invasives. We are the ones. Number two, we're the ones who are creating the environment that allows them to thrive. Because as we have had, these populations thrive in places where waste management is poor. Yes, indeed, they are very, very intelligent and they adapt very quickly. But we also know that we have a responsibility that we must be aware of as humans. That there is, even as we make these difficult choices, as we choose to poison these crows, as we choose between these two difficult outcomes, we must not forget that the crow is not the villain in this story. The human systems have created this opportunity. And while we have a responsibility to correct it, we cannot abscond the responsibility to do this as humanely as we can and reckon with what we have done to cause this problem. So I just want to add, yes, we cannot be complacent about, we cannot just be casual about killing these crows. Because while it is true that, yes, it has been said this side is very specific and may not be killing others, but in biodiversity management, what we know today, we might find out that actually there was a different thing we had not found out. So caution is called upon.
Yes. Now to you, Gasheru, Paul, as Nature Uganda, as Nature Kenya, sorry, as Nature Kenya, what are you doing about it? Do you have any control methods, or that is out of your scope of work?
I think within this discussion of the Indian House Code control, we initiated the whole process a while back ago, as part of as a keen institution interested in birds and the conservation of birds, as well as that transition, as Winnie is talking about, ethics of trying to control what you might term as invasive species, initiating a conversation almost like 7 years ago for trying to bring in the government into play to consider approaches to be able to control the Indian house crow. And it has been a long conversation until we got these new approvals that Kinoti and the team in Arocha are implementing at the coast, which just started 2 years ago. You can imagine a conversation we started in 2013, for example, with actions just starting 2 years ago. It has taken a lot of time towards government buy-in to be able to even collectively accept on best practices to control these birds. So with this discussion that we have now in Nairobi, it was never envisioned. Of course, as scientists, we knew with the spread of this crow, mostly using the main Mombasa road and the movement of it, it was in due time that this species was going to arrive in Nairobi. So learning from the examples that we're already implementing with like what's happening in the coast, colleagues like Kinoti are implementing, guided by Kenya Wildlife Service. The efforts by Arocha and the team along Mombasa Road, they're in Voi. I think you're also in Makindu, Kinoti. You're also in Makindu.
Not yet, but we are
Not
targeting
yet,
to get there.
but you're targeting the efforts happening in Kenya. The poisoning that is happening at the coastal region is not happening in Tanzania, as an example. So the control is not also going on there. So we might be controlling our birds here, but we still have feeder populations coming from other places moving. The efforts of controlling these birds need to be concerted at a regional level. It might be even a short while. If they're already in Nairobi, they might arrive in Kampala very soon. And the marabou storks and the hooded vultures that we have in Kampala might vanish. So it's something that as a civil society organizations, we are very interested in, and encouraging the relevant government agencies and us supporting them where we can to be able to start controlling these crows and having practices to manage them. So Kenya has not been, as you know, Kenya, we have, as a country of the big five, we have not had very keen interest on these small things we call birds. Institutions like ourselves, we have been the noisemakers on supporting birds conservation. But now I think the government is becoming much more open to conversations to be able to also put together management practices of this species, among others, within the country as we move along.
Well, thank you very much. I really like that you're looking at, the wider East African region. And I agree that this conversation should really be regional. For us in Uganda, birds are really a very big part of our tourism package. We have one of the most diverse species of birds in the world. So we cannot afford a bird as brilliant and as deadly as this house crow to cross over into Uganda and, elsewhere. So I agree with you that this conversation must move beyond Kenya and it should get regional attention and regional cooperation. And finally, I would like to ask all of us, let's put it at 5 years from now. What would success look like in Nairobi? Or in Kenya for that matter. I like that Paul has shed light on the policy options. You have showed us that you've been in conversation with the government for the last 7 years, and for the past 2 years, we see that the government has given you go ahead to start implementing these solutions. So that on the policy framework, that is already ticked off. But 5 years from now, what will success look like?
I would like maybe to go with that first. Basing on the success that we have had here, and particularly one site in Vipingo, where we used to have only dominated by house crows, and after exactly 2 years of doing this poisoning, we were able to record hooded vultures and kites on the same site, which were never seen before. Basing with this kind of success, we anticipate that the tourism of birds in coast will get back to where it was, and also improve the quality of the tourism that is currently here. Last year, I think Mombasa Tourism Council said that they lose about 200 million Kenyan shillings annually because of these house crows. So you can imagine that money does not get to the Kenyan pocket where it should be. So with these interventions, I think we can be able to achieve more, not only ecologically wise, but also economically.
I think that what this is teaching us is that no sustainable solution can focus exclusively on the bird. If these crows thrive, it's because our cities provide unlimited food through open dumps, markets, slaughter, waste, or poorly managed household garbage. Removing the birds without changing the conditions simply creates space for another population. We have to distinguish between population control and invasion control. The population control just reduces their numbers. We must ask ourselves, who needs to be at the table? both in terms of locally, here in Nairobi or Mombasa or in Kenya, who needs to be at the table? The county governments, the wildlife authorities, the waste managers, the environmental agencies, the researchers, and the citizens, because the citizens now need to start identifying this bird. Because if it's gonna eat the chicks that you have just invested in to grow your brood of chicken, you need to know this character as well. So there's a larger lesson here for conservation. We wait until nature presents us with a crisis, then we try to manage the crisis. But many wildlife crises actually begin within human systems. So we need to be more aware that human systems are very linked with wildlife systems. So we cannot poison our way out of environmental conservation. We cannot poison our way out of waste management problems.
Brilliant, brilliant. Winnie, I love your systems thinking. And finally, Paul.
I think I can top it up from Winnie. One of the challenges, as has been put already, is the lack of collective integration, of having an integrated system where us people in the science inform the planners take up the responsibility to plan well for the city. Because you see, like now in this issue of the Indian house crew, it risks, we have two airports in Nairobi, JKIA, one important hub. If these crews multiply in large numbers, it risks the whole airspace within the city, increasing risk for people arriving in these two airports, the Wilson and JKIA. Nairobi is a hub. We have the only national park in a city with at least 300 species of birds recorded in this city. That's also lost revenue generated from tourism. So in my perfect Nairobi or perfect Kenya is to ensure that everything is collectively done, and not just trying to do this firefighting we are doing at the moment.
Amazing conversation. And you have moved me and our listeners from understanding what the house crow is, thinking it's not a problem, sharing with us why we should actually be very scared, and then wrapping it all up. I like what Winnie said. We cannot poison our way out of this crisis. We cannot firefight our way out of this. Thank you very much for your time. And I truly hope 5 years from now, this conversation would have gone regional. For me, as an East African and as someone who comes from a city that is full of poor waste management, I really want this to become a regional conversation. Thank you and have a lovely evening.
Thank you so much, Patricia.
One small thing that it's a question that usually asked mostly is why poisoning? Maybe there were other methods that we could have used. I would like just to highlight a few of them, mostly traps and shooting, and nest removal and eggs removal. It's very hard for you to operate a trap and trap them because the traps are quite expensive and also take a longer time to trap a significant number. Just for an example, there's an hotel here in Watamu that had a trap for over 6 years before we started poisoning, and they had managed to trap only 7,000 these house crows within that period of time. Looking to the population that was there, about 12,000 that we counted in 2024, many other that are there that were already reproducing. This was not enough to curb this problem. Also, the shooting, due to the intelligence, also they tend to mark the person who does the shooting, and within a short while they become very smart and they run away whenever a person is coming. So that's why the poisoning itself has worked. For the last 2 years, we have had significant success where none of all these methods were used. But our aim is to, when we have a lower number, then we can switch on into